Hello, everyone, and welcome back to what is hopefully your favorite podcast, Eat, Cry, Yap. I'm your host, Kenalia, and I'm so excited to have you guys joining me in my second episode, believe it or not, of this podcast. And by the way, it's a new year, y'all. Happy New Year. Now, I know New Year's was last week, but it's still giving a brand new year. I mean, the air feels a little crisper, it's very cold, but the year I feel like has started off on a great one. I mean, for me, it's been so exciting having this podcast launched and getting y'all's feedback and excitement and sharing these exciting stories that I've had to share with y'all for what feels like forever, as well as like on like a less fun note, we've also had with the new year, restarting work. Some people worked during this like holiday break situation, and some of us took a lot of time off. Me personally, I took time off. I had the last 2 weeks off work. And so Monday was my first day back. And y'all, I was just not prepared. I mean, vacation is supposed to like rejuvenate you, have you feeling more fresh, more ready to tussle with whatever you need to tussle with. Because let's be honest, like sometimes work can be a fight. But I just was not prepared for the lethargy I was gonna have coming back to work this week. I thought I was gonna have so much more energy because I got some good rest during my break. I had fun, did some mental health stuff. Like I was feeling good, but boy, Monday came and Monday went, and your girl was knocked out. How was y'all's New Year's? Did y'all do like any resolutions? Do people still do that? Do people still do like, well, yeah, New Year's resolutions? Do people still do vision boards? I know for me, I definitely wanted to do that this year. I feel like it's so important, to like set the vibe for the year. You know what I mean? Like set an intention, set the tone for what you want to come out of this year. And, when I look back on 2024, your girl wanted to throw her away. I wanted to wrap her up in some newspaper. I wanted to set the newspaper on fire. And I wanted to put that newspaper in the garbage. Like 2024, we don't know her. Like she had to go. And so this year I was like, I really, really want to be intentional about how I start this year. And in the past, I've done like vision boards, but like I did them, I feel like I didn't really do them, if that makes sense. Like I felt like I just put random shit on a whiteboard and just called it a day. But this year, I was like, you know what? I definitely want to do it, but I want to be very particular about what I put on it. And I also want to make sure that I put my vision board in a place where I can see it on the reg, because, I do think there's something to visualizing, your goals and setting that intention as well as seeing it like on the reg, because I feel like, I think it's kind of along the lines of like manifesting, like the more that you practice talking about it and the more that you start, putting into the ether what you want to come out of it. And when you see it, some people just start to see it at that point, but when you start seeing it on the daily, have it in places where you normally roam, I feel like all of those things together help to get you where you want to go. And so like part one of starting off this new year was like wanting to set the intention with my vision board. And then part two, kind of towards the end of 2024, I got an accountability partner. And I feel like there's really something about having someone hold you accountable to what you want to do. Like, there's nothing like having another person to check in and be like, hey, girl, did you do what you said you were going to do? Hey, girl, what's the progress? Hey, girl, remember when you said you were going to do this? Did you do that? Like, it kind of like lights some fire under your ass. You know what I mean? And also kind of like holds you to your word, because if you're just talking about it and not doing it, it's going to come up. It's gonna catch you. And I don't know, for me, there's something about like having someone checking in and and holding me to those things to make me want to do it. Because the last thing I personally want to do is like have to consistently show up and have these conversations with this person and consistently be like, no, I didn't. And here's an excuse. Like, I want to be about it. I want to be like, yes, girl, I did this, 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 this. This was the outcome. This was this. To like make sure I'm doing what I need to do. You know what I mean? And so having those two things like in line for this year, I feel like really helped, because just looking at how I've started off my 2025 compared to how I started my 2024 in itself are just so different. And I just want to take a moment and just share gratitude with all of you who have already tuned in, and all of you who have been sharing your support and really like cheering me on, because look, it is, it can be nerve-wracking putting yourself out there and talking your ass off and just seeing what sticks. Like, it is not easy. And I just really appreciate the community that I've built so far. And I can't wait to see how this community grows and how we grow together while we are talking about the crazy things that come out of this life. So I'm just thankful for y'all. And I just wish for all of you out there just all the best in this new year. If you don't do vision boards, I feel it. If you don't, start the new year doing something super planny or whatever, so be it. That's cool. Not everyone is about that life. Sometimes a new year is just seen as a fresh start, or maybe it's just seen as like a new day. But I wish for y'all like all the continued health, prosperity, love. If love is something that you want to come out of 2025, I know we all out here looking for love, those of us single girlies. And so I wish that. And I hope that you all are able to do something for yourself this year that maybe you weren't able to do before. I know that that's something that's really difficult, especially in work culture. I mean, shoot, 24 hours? It feels like we don't even have that most days. And it feels like it's so easy for us to get into the lull of working. And before you know it, you've worked your job. And then before you know it, it's nighttime. And then you barely have some time to just relax, because you got to go get dinner, or you've got to take care of your kids if you have kids, or you've got other responsibilities. And then boom, it's time for bed. So it's like the cycle of life just feels like it passes by, and it goes by so fast because we're so busy. And I feel like oftentimes we forget ourselves in the mix. And so I hope that you are able to do something for you this year, something that you've never done before, or something familiar that just brings you joy. I feel like that's so important for us as humans to kind of keep us sane in the midst of what's going on in this crazy world. Okay. So that's what I wish for y'all this year. But in starting off this year, I feel like we are starting off on what is a wild start, because there has been so much going on in the media lately. And, I don't know if y'all are like news watchers, but I have really tried to refrain from actively like watching like TV news. Like, I will get my news from social media these days, from like independent journalists or like blogs. And that's intentional, because I feel like it can be overwhelming to consume all of the doom and gloom that comes from just regular TV media. However, I also think it's important to be informed. And I just kind of feel like it's chaotic, and the chaos that I really want to start off with chatting about today, as we're segueing into what's the tea. I really wanted to sip a little tea on this Diddy situation. You guessed it, Diddy. Because while this started in 2024, and by started I mean the information share that spread like wildfire in the media about Diddy, I feel like, one, it's ongoing. The case is ongoing. And two, there have been more people who have come forward with their stories against some of the elites. And one of them being one of Diddy's besties back in the day, maybe still current day, which is Jay-Z. And it has me feeling like, is Hollywood shaking right now? Like, is Hollywood shaking in her boots? Because the people who are known as, some of the people, excuse me, who are known as A-list celebrities are being put in the hot seat and starting to be held accountable for terrible things that they have done over the years. And no one is safe. And on one end, it's like the day of reckoning is here. But on the other end, it's like, holy shit. How did these people go under the radar for so long? Although they're highly visible, how in the hell did these people get away with for so long all of these terrible acts? And I'm just going to put a trigger warning right here. I'm not going to go into any depth about the accusations. I'm going to keep this general, but if this is triggering for you, I absolutely want to put a trigger warning here. You can go ahead and skip this, baby. But I just have to take some time to talk about this because, you know, Cat Williams in 2024, that man said 2024 is going to be the year of revelation. And I think 2025 is going to be the year that the image of celebrity is going to massively shift and crumble. And I feel that way because, you know, I feel like for so long, people used to feel like celebrities were like untouchable and celebrity like these far away distant things that like we could never see or touch, right? But over time, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, maybe you have, but I feel like over time, you would start to see magazines or like websites start publicizing stories like, look at Jennifer Aniston. She's just like us. Look at Beyonce. She goes to the grocery store just like that, just like us. So I feel like over time, people started to try the media and people tried to humanize celebrities more and more. And I feel like once that shift started to happen, we also started to see celebrities, I wouldn't say lose their like elite status, but I feel like that kind of lowered them down to not a level playing field, but kind of like brought them down more to where they're not necessarily untouchable. Because eventually we start seeing lawsuits come out and claims and arrests being more publicized. Like more and more, I feel like you're starting to see that hell yeah, celebrities are just like us. And so we get into things like the Me Too movement where people are being held accountable for sex crimes and in a very public manner, mind you. And so fast forwarding to the Diddy situation, I feel like you see Sean Combs go from the untouchable brother love to Diddy to ill. He's trash. But you also see the massive divide in the court of public opinion when it has come to celebrities like not just Diddy, but even like Johnny Depp. Like, I feel like the audience has been split in half with both of these men. You have the victim believers and you have the victim blamers. And it almost feels like most of the time, the voices of the victim blamers are heard louder than those who believe and stand with the believers. And it truly blows me that we live in a society that when it comes to a celebrity, someone of status, someone who has been influential in music, movies, racing, you name it, there's not even like the logical thought for some people that like, yeah, they could have done that. It's almost like people absolve them of being capable of doing that just because they did something that benefited them, like made their favorite song or starred in their favorite movie or produced something. Like I feel like that personal benefit, as well as the fact that the world generally is not very much trauma informed, as well as sexism and racism and all those different layers that also play a role into whether people believe or take accusations seriously, that completely cloud people's minds into thinking that there's no way this person did this and that person actually is the one who's at fault. Like, that has been the most disgusting thing that I've seen in reading the reports on what's been going on with Diddy's case, and also in seeing how Jay-Z has been fighting the claims against him and claiming that, this is just a money grab from the victim's lawyer and immediately trying to spew public opinion. Like, it feels like a game. And I hate that, because why can't we believe women first? Why can't we have empathy for victims, period, first? Why are we so quick to assume that there's no way a human could do something that is human behavior? And by human behavior, I mean terrible human behavior, because we all don't do that shit. Let's be clear. Because I believe that if Jay-Z and Diddy were regular Joes on the street, there would not be this large divide. If anything, I feel there would be even more believers. But again, I really feel like outside of the layers of bias that come into play with public opinion, I really think there's that personal element of the personal benefit people have had from celebrities that makes it almost personal to them that someone could ever say that they traumatized them or ruined their life or they're suing them. And that is what I feel like is a major downfall of this civilization, because I don't care who you are. I don't care how famous you are. When you put yourself in the shoes of a victim, how could you not have empathy? I feel like our first response should always be, that must have taken a lot of courage. Wow. That must have been so hard for them. I'm going to choose to believe them until we get to the point to whether they're proven innocent or guilty or whatever it is in the law system. But instead, these victims are met with already having to deal with the fact that they're going through with these lawsuits, that they're going through with these claims, but they also have to deal with the public vitriol. And that is what is so wild and so sad about this society. And so I think, and I'm just spitballing here, I think that it is going to be a circus if and when Diddy and Jay-Z go on trial for their crime. Because we see with the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp case trial, whatever you name it, how much of a spectacle, how much of a circus that turned into because of the fan mania and because of the investment into that. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen with Diddy's trial, but I also feel like, okay, let me put on my conspiracy theorist hat here for a second. I feel like there are a lot of cleanups happening behind the scenes right now, and I feel like that is going to continue to happen during this case, and I think they're going to try to seal a lot of the things from the public, because there have been reports of names being dropped, big names being involved in some of these videos, and I feel like there's a reason why we haven't heard a lot of the names, and I think it's because a lot of the powers that be's, a lot of the bigger wigs who were involved in these things are using their power to their advantage. And, in saying that, I think it absolutely makes sense why people like Diddy, people like Jay-Z skirt by for years unchecked for their crimes because of power and influence. And that is so dangerous. I believe that Diddy did everything that they said that he did. And I believe that Jay-Z did everything that they said that they did. I just don't think that I don't think that we should be surprised at who we are hearing more about as time goes on and who we will hear more about when time goes on. And so, look, that is my declaration for 2025. I truly believe that the image of celebrity is going to change. I feel like living in hierarchies like we do, it's unequitable, obviously, but it's also disgusting. And I truly feel that even humans with money should never be treated with more respect, kindness, hospitality, customer service than the working class. And so I feel like it was a matter of time for the celebrity image to burn to the ground. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you have, how many movies you make, how many Oscars you have, how many cars you have. To me, what matters most is the kind of human you are and the kind of imprint that you leave on the world when you're gone. But for some, what matters is the materialistic things. And for some, it doesn't matter how you treat others. And so, to me, I think it was a matter of time. And I feel that what's done in the dark will always come to the light. And so keep me posted. Let me know if you're watching this on Spotify. Let me know in the comments. Or if you're tuning in on YouTube, let me know in the comments what y'all think about the Diddy Jay-Z situation and what y'all's predictions are from their upcoming trials when and if we get there. Okay, y'all. So I was so excited for this episode because today we are yapping about singleness. And boy, do I have stories for y'all. Being single, I feel, is truly a mixed bag, as we all know, because all of us have been there at some point. But I truly feel that when the bulk of your dating experience has come from dating apps, the world looks a lot different than you ever thought it would. You meet so many people that you never thought that you would. Now, of course, that's if you're actively going on dates, if you're making connections a lot, and or if you just want some free food, let's be honest. And so, when I think back on, my dating experience, I've been single since mid 2022, and I've used dating apps legit since I was 19, 18, around that age. And at that time, Tinder was like happening. Like Tinder was like the number one app at that time. It had been around for a while, but like everyone was using that more than anything else. And when you're like just getting out of high school, you know what the hell you want. And you probably don't have a lot of expectation for what you were hoping to get out of your dating experience. And so very early on and moving into my early 20s, dating was wild. Dating was stressful. And dating was fucking grimy. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, it was grimy. I mean, so much so. Let me just go into a story because so one of the grimiest dates, I have to say, was hands down with this guy who he was like how would I describe him? He was like a wannabe entrepreneur for like a health, right? And so like that was like his whole life. Like his Tinder was like all about his like health app and like all of like his meal plans that he was gonna make and like how he's a businessman, whatever. Mind you, the dude was hot. Okay, he was fine. So like he was worth conversating with, you know what I mean? I can't say that he was the most interesting person that I ever met, but he was hot, so why not? And one time he had me over his house. This was maybe like the second time we hung out. I had hung out with him like once before. And the second time we hung out, he invited me over, right? So I'm like, ooh, like, he kind of likes me. Like, he invited me over to his house and he offered to like cook for me. He was gonna make for me one of, sorry, I'm giggling to myself because he was gonna make for me one of the foods that he like created. Like in his health app, he had like different curated meal plans as like one of the offerings. And so I got to his house and he was like cooking, had like a little like chef hat on, and was making like, I don't know, some kind of like Italian dish. Like I can't remember. But I remember like walking around his house and being like, I think this guy is kind of a maniac because there were like writings like all over his wall. Now, okay, what I mean by that is like he didn't like write on his walls. He just had like a bunch of like plans that were like written on a lot of his walls. So I was just like, wow, like this guy has a lot of ideas, but also like, are you like a little cuckoo? Because this is like a lot of writing, like a lot. But you know, I'm not trying to judge because I'm just there for a good time, not a long time. Like this guy's hot, remember? Like that's our focus. This guy is hot. So like he's cooking for me or whatever. He makes the food. The food is shit. And I'm sitting here like, hold on. You done hyped up this food to me. Like, y'all, this man was so excited to cook this little Italian dish for me. And the shit was bland. I remember there was asparagus. He burnt that shit. And then I also remember like, he was like watching me eat. And I'm like, oh, like, do you think that like I'm about to give you feedback? Like I'm a customer or some shit? That's not what I'm here for. So, but to be nice, I took a little few bites or whatever, and I was like, okay. But it wasn't giving. So eventually, to get out of finishing that meal, I was like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and really what I was actually doing was like spitting out the food, as well as like, readjusting my makeup, making sure I'm looking good. And I felt the urge to pee. So I go over to the toilet, and what do I see in that toilet? Y'all, I see the biggest turd I have ever seen in my fucking life. I'm talking that shit looked like a tree branch that fell into. Y'all, I don't mean to be too gross, but the shit was thick and long. That's all I'm gonna say. It was thick and long. And I remember like literally standing there in shock. Because first of all, it's already shocking one, being in a man's bathroom that you've never been in before and seeing that they didn't flush their shit. Right? That's one. Number two, who takes such a massive shit and doesn't flush? Like, I know your stomach must have been hurting all day holding that shit in. So why would you ever think to get up from the toilet and not flush that shit? That is so disrespectful. But three, I was even more shooketh because the bathroom did not smell. So that signaled to me that this dude sprayed this bathroom knowing that he took a shit and did not even think to flush that. Like, you didn't want, I don't know, to make sure that the toilet was clear for your guests. Like, you don't want to make sure that, like, I don't know, that, like, I don't see that. Like, y'all, I literally was rethinking all of my life decisions in that moment because I could not believe the audacity for that man. But I also was like, okay, on the off chance this man forgot that he took this big ass shit, what do I do? Because there ain't no way I'm about to walk out this bathroom and this man is going to think that I took this big old tree branch of a shit in this bathroom. There ain't no way. There ain't no way. And so I really had to think about it. I was in that bathroom for a long time. You would think that like I did that because I was in there for so long. And I ultimately blew my nose and flushed that with my eyes closed. Like I couldn't even look. I had to flush that thing, wash my hands, and go out of the toilet. After that, I couldn't even continue that date, y'all. I was so disgusted. I was so disgusted because it's the audacity, it's the unsanitariness, and it's also the fact that you try to clean up the crime. Like, you sprayed that bathroom, knowing you did that atrocity in your toilet, and I was gonna see that, and instead of just getting rid of the evidence, you kept that there? Nah, fam. Nah. And the craziest part about that story is that he tried to make out with me at the end of that date and then had the nerve to ghost me after that. I said, oh, hell no. This is what's going to come out of that experience? Hell no. And that was probably like my, I don't know, like fourth or so time being ghosted in like my dating experience at that time. And that one, I will say, hurt the least. Because not only did I dodge a bullet, but I also dodged a health scare because that shit was so unsanitary. I could have caught something. Okay. So when I say dating is grimy, that is the shit that I put that into myself in that situation. Boy, was I surprised at what came out of that. Okay. But that is just one of like the oddities that come out of dating strangers. Let's be honest. Like, we are not going on dates. When you're meeting people on dating apps, you're not going on dates with people that you've known for years, unless you run into friends on dating apps, which for me was very few or far between, thank goodness. But that's not very, very common. And so, I really was swimming in the trenches for a long time because I'm dating in a very white dating pool, one. But two, I don't know what I want. And three, I'm also trying to figure out what I want as I'm going, like what I want, what I like, what I dislike. And I really feel like over time, I definitely got more experience with the different types of men there are in this world. And that in itself was so wild because I had always had people like warn me, like, be careful, men ain't shit, or, have boundaries, or, like, be careful or whatever. But I'm one of those people that I'll listen to what you have to say, but I also want to have my own experience so I can form my own opinion. And I formed some opinions all right. I mean, very early on and for a long time, there would be a lot of weird white men that I would chat with who I didn't know were weird at the bat. Okay, let's start with that. But, dating in this dating pool, I mainly dated white guys because here in Oregon, when you are a person of color here, when you are a Black person here specifically, the odds of you dating another Black person are not very high, but it truly depends. And in my experience, I tried dating Black men. I tried connecting with Black men on dating apps, but what I found was Black men preferred women of other races. Black women preferred women with certain features. And that was very disheartening. But on one hand, I understood it because I know the Black experience here. I mean, when you grow up in spaces where you are the only one for the majority of your life and where the standards of beauty do not look like you and you don't have representation in your teachers, in your coworkers, in the movies that you watch growing up, there is sort of a separation there between, your identity, your race, and what you romanticize and what you find attractive, if that makes sense. And so eventually I felt like I needed to go for men who would go for me, and the men that would give me the most attention were white men. And so once I opened that door, boy, did an array of shit come through. I'm talking fetishizers. I'm talking, oh, I'm so sorry for your Black experience. I'm talking, I've never talked to a Black girl before, but I'd love to, or I've never fucked a Black girl before, but I'd love to. I mean, y'all, the kind of DMs I would get alone, like this one time, this guy, okay, he was giving like a mix of MGK. If you know who MGK is, that tall, skinny, I think he's like a rapper, like a white boy rapper who's dating Megan Fox, if you know who that is. He gives MGK's cousin if he was like bluegrass, but like not super bluegrass. Like that's the best I can describe him. Like he was a weird mesh, but he was kind of hot. And so, we're chatting or whatever. He's talking about how like he's into music and how like he has all these like music videos and how like music is his life or whatever. So I'm just like, he's so artistic, which I loved at the time. And one day we're chatting and like the conversation gets flirty. And he asked me one of the weirdest questions I had ever been asked in my life. We were talking about like it was just like cute, flirty, like on the surface. And then out of nowhere, he goes, "Can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Sure." He was like, "Is the inside of your vagina pink? I've always been curious. I mean, I assume it's probably not, but I just wanted to know." If you're listening to this podcast, you definitely can't see my face, but just know I'm having a deep breath moment. Because now I know the American public school system is trash, but I know it ain't that trash. And there are also things out there like porn where you see people's body parts, and I'm pretty sure people like him had seen porn multiple times. And so I knew that question was never coming from a good place. Okay, it was never coming from oh, I don't know. It was coming from a very sexual place, and I was disgusted. I was absolutely disgusted. And he followed up with I said something like, are you kidding me? Like, do you really not know? Did you not go to like health class? Like I was doing at this time. Like I was really like, I hate that I was so mad, and I also wanted to educate him, and I also like was trying not to hurt his feelings because at that time I was definitely a people pleaser. We all have our battles, okay? And he really tried to hit me with he had no idea, and he never knew that was a disrespectful question. Like for me, that was the first moment where a guy, and this is on a serious note, like that was the first moment in my life where a guy made me feel like I was not a human and I was just a body part, or I was just sex to him. Mind you, we never had sex. I never met that guy. That was our last conversation. But like, it made me feel like I was an object, I guess. And to then go on dates with guys who would say very ignorant things, thinking that I would find it funny, or have guys jokingly say the N-word, like I would just brush that off. I mean, y'all, the audacity was crazy. And I remember at one point thinking like, am I ever just going to meet a guy who genuinely just likes me and isn't concerned about my body parts, or doesn't just see that I'm a Black woman? You know what I mean? Like, it felt very difficult to feel like a human sometimes going through dating. And I felt very unwanted for a long time by men in general, because I felt like either I wasn't being pursued, or if I was, the intention was the worst. And being a late bloomer on top of that, for so long in like my early days of dating, I was just like, I would compare myself a lot to like my friends that were like skinny or like super pretty, or if like back in my clubbing days, if we'd go to the club, like I would try to make myself like look super pretty and like wouldn't get approached. So like you add in like all of these layers to your dating experience, and I think honestly like that was the beginning of like my insecurities that I had, because I was not getting the same treatment as my friends who aren't Black. And I was getting the experience that a lot of Black women have in their own ways, in their own journeys in life. And so I definitely struggled with dating for a long time. And it really wasn't until I moved away for college to where I finally dated someone of color and truly like grew my identity too as a Black woman. And three, where I also formulated my sense of more of my sense of self and what I bring to the table into the world. And so as I'm aging and as I'm now dating seriously, boy, do things change. And I start dealing with a new set of issues like attachment styles. Now, if you haven't heard of attachment styles, types, wounds, you name it, I believe there's like 4 in total. There's secure attachment, there's anxious attachment, there is avoidant attachment, and there's one more that I can't remember, but I'll post it on the screen. And, for a long time, when I look back on like my early dating experience and my beginning of like adult years, I never really felt secure in romantic relationships. I always felt like I could only share or show like an aspect of myself. I felt like the shoe was always going to drop. I felt like I wouldn't be accepted as my whole self. I just navigated relationships just kind of like hoping that they would stay. But in reality, I was rocking with an anxious attachment. And, with attachment styles and wounds, like a lot of them can start in childhood or they can start, as you're starting your dating relationships and as you're navigating pain and different aspects of a relationship that are unhealthy. And for me, I've dated a lot of guys that are emotionally unavailable or they're avoidant. They're selfish. They love to have their cake and eat it too. And so I picked up toxic traits as I'm navigating toxic relationships. But in my mind, they're the ones who were in the wrong. Like it was very easy for me to point the finger at the guys because what they did or how they acted in the relationship was so much more harmful than me. And I didn't realize the things that I was doing in relationships until I started going to therapy. Child, one thing about therapy will drag you by your edges, okay? Because it was not until my therapist and I started doing attachment work and talking through my relationship patterns and different breakups to where I experienced some difficult truths about myself. And listen, we're not going to neglect the fact that men ain't shit most of the time and that men can be trash and not all of us have the best experience with men. However, one super important lesson that I had to learn and that really shook me to the core was the revelation that men will treat you the way that you allow them to treat you. Child, I almost passed out on the couch when my therapist helped me get to that realization. Because what do you mean there are 2 people in a relationship that can do toxic things? What do you mean I have to be held accountable to my actions that caused the breakup as well? Like, what do you mean that I'm not the only person who deserves grace after a breakup? Like, it it was not to me. I'm thinking about my pain and I'm thinking about my wounds that I grew from relationships without acknowledging that just because someone hurts you doesn't mean that you didn't hurt them either. Or just because you thought you were perfect in a relationship or a situationship is most likely not the case. And really letting that sink in showed me that there was a lot of work that I needed to do on myself, because I could have avoided some of the pain in my hurt. Well, I won't say avoided, because I do think that everything happens in this life for a reason, but some of my experiences came from my own doing. And some of these men that I dated were so disrespectful to me because I allowed them to be. And letting that sink in was like, damn, like, yeah, that happened. And I was angry for a bit, if I'm honest, because I'm a perfectionist, okay? Like, I be trying to be on my shit all the time, whether it comes like work, romance, you name it. Like, I can do no wrong. I can't do no wrong because I'm a perfectionist. So I'm going to make sure that I do everything that I need to do. But when you focus so much on not fucking up, it's actually very easy to fuck up, believe it or not. And having to acknowledge that I allowed people to treat me badly and that I also hurt myself. The beauty, I would say, in therapy is learning how to be kind to yourself and learning how to grieve for your past self and learning that your emotions and your feelings are valid and you need to hold space for that. And that was so helpful because I felt like I held in a lot of anger and like resentment towards a lot of guys. And I remember like talking to my friends about so many situations and like being so angry. Like I was lit up inside, legit. Like my palms were sweaty or like my armpits were sweaty. Like I was so angry. And a lot of that was unprocessed emotions. And so it became imperative to me as I inched towards my late 20s to work on my shit, because the last thing that I want to do, like, okay, you know those characters in those movies that are typically like old characters. They'll be like, "Hey kid, like I did this and this and this and I regret it. Like don't be like me." And they push their kids in a direction so hard and like ruin their lives. Like I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the kind of person that lives lives with regrets. Like I want to be the kind of person that lives my life with the agency that I do have and makes the choices that I need to make once I have the information that I need or once I've learned what I needed to learn. And so I wanted to learn through my therapy journey, aside from all of the other shit I needed to work on, how to be a good partner. And that is one of, I think, the coolest things that I've learned through dating in my late 20s, the importance of being just as good of a partner yourself as you expect your partner to be. Because look, while I think it's important to like have expectations for what you want, and if you are not bringing to the table what you expect a man or a woman, whatever your dating style is, to be, how can you expect that relationship to work? And so working on your shit is important. Figuring out what you like and what you don't like is so important. And also ensuring that you're exhibiting those characteristics is the most important, in my opinion. Because if your long-term goal is a long-term relationship, a marriage, a partnership, healthy relationships require effort on both ends, right? Not just on one end. While, okay, sidebar, I do think it's important for a man to be a little bit more obsessed with you than you are with them, but that's neither here nor there. There has to be effort on both ends, and there has to be healthy habits on both ends. The last thing I wanted to do in my late 20s and in my 30s, 40s, you name it, is ruin what could be an amazing thing because I didn't work on my shit, or I chose to stay bitter over the pain, the vitriol, the stress, the fear, all of it, that came from bad situations because I didn't make the choice to do something about it. And so, look, the single season is not easy. I feel like it's probably one of the most difficult things that we go through in this life, but I feel like it should be one of the most cherished seasons in our lives. And I can confidently say that now. I can't say that I could always, because let's be real, it'd be trash sometimes. But, when I think about long term, and like when you think about long term, what you want, if long term partnership is your goal, like the single season most likely will not last for forever. And in your single season is the time that we have to figure out what we want, to figure out not just what you want in a relationship, but shit, what are your hobbies? Do you have hobbies, girl? Do you do things outside of work? Like, do you cook for yourself? Like, we can't just be expecting these things from our partners. You know what I mean? And what other time do you have than during your single season to figure that out? What other time do you have than your single season to experience what it's like to live by yourself, to do single things, Like, that ends once that partnership starts because your life changes. When you get married, if you go the traditional route, you're not living by yourself. You're not going to single events. You don't have the same outlook, lifestyle than you did before, I think those things change, as they should, kind of naturally. And so if there's anything that I can leave you with at the end of this episode, it's that the single season is a cherished, can be a cherished season. It is such an important season, and it is one that doesn't have to be brutal all the time. There are things that we can do to enjoy this single season, and watering yourself and figuring out yourself is one of the most beautiful parts of that. And so that's just a little piece. That's just a little piece of the single journey that your girl has gone through. And I'm curious, maybe over time we'll start getting into some more dating horror stories, because we all have them. We all have been in these dating streets, but I feel like singlehood is just a shared thing that we have all gone through at some point, and it is such a connector. Like, it's such a fun way to connect to people. And so if you have any dating horror stories that you would love for me to yap about on this podcast, anonymously, of course, please send them to my DMs at ECY_podcast. And I would love to yap about yours and mine, so we can kiki, okay? Because singlehood conversations do not have to be sad. Although that they are a mixture of emotions, they can also be funny, and they can also be so fun to look back on and just laugh and see how far you've come. Well, that's it for this week, y'all. I can't wait to see y'all next week, because I will have my very first podcast guest on to talk about a very exciting topic, and we will be eating some hint, spicy foods. I can't wait to see y'all next week at 12 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Spotify Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. Have a great rest of your week, y'all. Bye.